Hey everybody, welcome to Activity 2.3. We're continuing with our email writing unit, and I hope by now, after having some notes and doing a little practice, that you're starting to get the hang of what goes into a good professional email. Remember, my goal for you is that you can thrive in your communications with other people through email writing. And so let's get started. Today, you get to be the expert, and you get to be the one to grade some example student writing. In order to do this activity, you're going to need to get into Google Classroom in order to access the document you'll use for this activity. So if you go into the materials column here and click on the Google Classroom icon that you see, it'll open up Google Classroom and then navigate to Communications. Once you're here, use the tab at the top to go over to Classwork. And you'll see three different assignments here. Two of them are gray for me, but they'll be all blue for you by the time you look at this. They're gray for me because I'm making this early and they haven't actually been sent out yet. But the document that you want is this one called Grading an Email, Activity 2.3. Click on it to expand it, and then down here you'll see the document in a little box. Click on that to open it. Now let's look at the directions together. It says, read the email below, written by an imaginary student. Keep the email tips from last week in mind as you read. Next, use the rubric on the second page to grade this student's email. I'm going to pause right here because this is the first part of the assignment. Then we'll look at the second part after. But here is an example student email written by some student at hs309.org to, and then here's the teacher. Well, this is the teacher and this is the student. Here's the subject line, and then you can see the email right here. I'd highly recommend pausing the video right now and reading through this email. Now let's go down and take a look at the rubric that I'm asking you to use to grade the student's email. So down here is a rubric. If you've never heard that word before, it's just a list of expectations that teachers will often use this form of expectations to grade something that a student does. And so now you get to use the rubric and you're grading the student. So you can see that in the rubric, in the middle column here, in the expectation column, I've taken our email tips from our notes last week and made them into little check boxes. So we're going to use this to grade the student's email. Over here are sort of the big picture aspects of the email that we're looking for. The first one is the parts of the email. And then over here, each one of these check boxes is the specific expectation we're going to look for. So again, I hope that you've read the email once through already before we start doing this, but we'll do this first row together so you can see what I want you to do, and then you can go through and do the other three rows. So the first thing we're going to do up here, we're looking at email parts. And the first expectation is that all emails should include a clear, direct subject line. So let's go back up and see if it does have a clear, direct subject line. Here's the subject line, class tomorrow. This isn't the worst subject line I've ever seen. I've seen times when students wrote the entire email message just in the subject line. So this isn't terrible, but if I was the teacher getting this email and it says class tomorrow, I wouldn't know, is this student going to be in class tomorrow and is wondering about what we're doing? Is it their birthday tomorrow and they want to bring cupcakes into class? Or are they going to be gone tomorrow and they're going to miss class and they want to find out what work they're going to be doing? If I just looked at the subject line, there would be no way of me knowing. So again, it's not the worst subject line I've ever seen, but I wouldn't say that it's clear or direct. So I'm not going to check this box off. But let's go on to the second one. It says begins with a professional greeting. So I'm going to go back up here. The greeting is, "Hi, Mrs. S." Now, I'm assuming at this point that the teacher is okay with a student calling her Mrs. S. It looks like her full name is Schultz, so Mrs. Schultz. And so I'm not going to ding her on that. I think it's probably okay if she says Mrs. S. And she said hi. That's an okay greeting. It's not the most formal greeting. She could have said dear Mrs. S, dear Mrs. Schultz, but I would say the greeting is there. So I'm going to give her credit for that. So let me go down here. Did it begin with a professional greeting? Yes. I'm going to check this box. Now I'll show you how to check the box here. If you click on it twice, it will select the box. Click on it once and it will select all three of the boxes, and then click on it another time and it will highlight just the one box that you want. And then once it's highlighted blue like that, now if you two-finger click on it, it'll bring up some options. What do you want to fill this box with? And I'm going to go with the check mark and then just regular click. So check. It did begin with a professional greeting. The third one is, does it include a signature block with a closing and a name? This is at the very end where it'd be like sincerely and then the student's name. Let's go up and see if the student did that. Here's the end of the email. I guess I'll talk to you later. Don't forget to give me that stuff I need. I'll do it unless my teeth itch. I don't see any like have a good day, comma, and then the student's name or sincerely, comma. There's no closing to this email. It just ends. So I would say the student does not have a signature block with a closing and a name. So there's 3 possible points here. Every checked box would be worth 1 point. So no points for this first one. There's a point for this one, and then no points for this one. So over here in the score box, this student could have scored a maximum of 3 points if they would have had all 3 of these things. But I'm going to count up how many check marks I have, which is just 1. So I'm going to type a 1 right here. Okay, so on email parts, the student has a 1 score. Now what I want you to do is go through the rest of these. Email professionalism, go through these check boxes, scroll back up, check the email, email tone, go through and check and look at the email, and then email conventions. And do your best with that. And then write a score for each of these areas here in this end column. Lastly, in the total score box, add up what they got in these top 4 and put a total score right here. If this student's email would have been perfect, a perfect example of a professional email, it would have been a 12 right there. That's the highest score they could get. But we can already tell it's not going to be a 12 because the student only got 1 possible point here. After you do that, I'd just like you to reflect in a couple of sentences, 1 or 2 sentences here. What did this email do well? What's 1 or 2 things the student actually did do? So you can go up and look for what check marks did she get. And then down here, answer that. And then what could be improved in this email? So think about any of these boxes that don't have check marks. I mean, right away we could say, well, she could include a closing, like a signature block, put her name at the end of it. But choose a few things that you would suggest to this student to improve the email. And then you're done with this part. That's the first part of this assignment. Now let's look at the second part. So we stopped right here. Let's look at the last piece here. It says, last, open up Seesaw and find your example email from last week. Now, if you recall, last week I asked you to go into Seesaw and write an imaginary email as if you had just been gone from school for a week to California or Disneyland or something. And you missed a whole week of class and you're writing an email to me to ask if you can get caught up and ask what you missed. And you weren't actually sending it as an email, you were just typing it, right? I want you to go back and find that in Seesaw. If you open up Seesaw and go to communications, it should be the most recent thing in your journal. And you're going to do the same thing with that email that we just did with this example student email. You're going to grade yourself. So here's the rubric we use to grade the student. Let me go down. Here's on the third page is the rubric you can use to grade your email that you wrote. So you can see there's a few more directions here. Open up Seesaw. There's a link right there. Go to your communications class, find the example email you wrote last week, and use this rubric to give yourself a grade. Don't be afraid to be honest. The grade you give yourself won't actually matter. The only thing that will matter is, did you do this activity or not? But the grade you give yourself won't impact your actual grade. So anyways, let me show you what that looks like. You can click on this link right here and click right here to go to Seesaw, or you could go back in your tabs to the distance learning site to this activity, and you can see it says apps used Seesaw, and you could click right there. Either one will take you to the same place. So I'll just do this. And it'll take you to Seesaw. Now, I'm not signed in yet. If you're already signed in, it'll take you right in. Let me click I'm a student, and I'm going to sign in with my generic student account so you can see what a student will see. Okay, now you're going to notice that the first thing that it did was it went to science, probably because the last thing that was signed into, or the last class that I was in when I was signed in as seventh grader, is science. So to go over to communications, just a reminder, you go up here to your name and click right there, and then you can see the different classes that you're in. And here I can see communications, group 1. I'll click on that. And here is my communications page. And I'm already on the journal, and I can see right here, here is the example email I wrote last week. It's pretty short. Mr. Nielsen, I was gone last week to California with my family, and I need help getting caught up on communications. What did I miss? Thank you for your help. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just keep this email open in this tab. I'm going to go back here to my grading an email document, and I'm going to go through and do the same thing. I'm going to ask, did I include a clear, direct subject line? Well, you might not have remembered to do that because it wasn't in an email. It was just in a note. But maybe you did include a subject line. Did you start with a professional greeting, dear Mr. Nielsen, or not? And go through and see how many check marks you would give yourself. Give yourself a score over here, total it up. Give yourself a couple of pieces of feedback. What did you do well in that email? What could be improved? Now, I don't want you to feel bad here. You had no idea what you were doing when you wrote that example email in Seesaw. We hadn't even talked at all about what goes into a good email yet. It was a pre-assessment. So please don't feel bad if you have like one checkbox or maybe only just a couple of checkboxes. That's okay. I just want you to see where you started this unit at. Okay. So again, please don't feel bad. I'm not trying to make you feel bad by doing this, but I want you to look through and see what you included. When you're done with that and you've given yourself a score for that email and you've given yourself some comments, then up here you will see, I don't have it because I'm the teacher, but you'll see a button that says turn in, and don't forget to click turn in to turn this assignment in. All right, I have one more thing. This week at some point you should have gotten an email from Mr. Ipple, and it probably is a pretty bad email because I shared this rubric with Mr. Ipple, and he was going to try and write you an example bad email that doesn't do these things. This is an extra credit opportunity for you. If you would like some extra credit, go into your email inbox, open that email up from Mr. Ipple. It should have come sometime this week, probably around like August 31st or maybe September 1st. And look at that email and then reply to Mr. Ipple's email and give him some feedback and say, hey, Mr. Ipple, here's some feedback on your email. Here's what you could do better. You could include a subject line. You could make sure you use a professional greeting. Give him a little bit of feedback on how he could improve his email, and he will let me know if you did that. And if he lets me know that you did that, then I will give you some extra credit on this assignment. So if that last part, if you're like overwhelmed already and you're like, my inbox is already full, don't worry about that last part about Mr. Ipple's email. Just do the rest of it instead. Okay. Thank you guys. Have a great day.